And his mother and brothers came to him. This is Yeshua. His mother and brothers came to him and were unable to get to him because of the crowd. And it was reported to him, saying, your mother and your brothers are standing outside, wishing to see you. And he answering said to them, my mother and my brothers are those who are hearing the word of Elohim and doing it. So, we've had quite a little discussion over the last couple of parts dealing with things like, who is in the world and who's not in the world, what's considered being in the world, who your family is. He's telling you, don't take this as, Rabbi, you're getting involved here and meddling and stuff. He's telling you that he himself was more concerned with those who are doing the word of Elohim being family than those of bloodline relationship. And this is a hard thing for us. This is a real challenge for us to embrace that reality. But yet, this is him talking about his own family. Not that they were not Torah observant, but he was trying to make the point that, hey, don't just think that there's this hierarchy that I need to give some special preference to those who I was born into as a family. He's saying, my family, he says, my mother and my brothers are those who are hearing the word of Elohim and doing it. Oh, look at that. Even Yeshua is concerned with you doing something. No surprise there. It's always been that way. He's made statements like, my Father works, so do I, so you need to too. So doing the word of Elohim, not just hearing it, has always been a part of it, which is really the essence of the Shema. The hearing that leads to doing. The hearing that then manifests into action. And so I want us to really understand as we're going through all of this, one of the things we may need to overcome is our disconnected understanding, not our fault necessarily, we're raised that way, with who really your family is. See, I think one of the reasons why the body is having a huge challenge being the body, being a tightly knit together body, is because you don't see me as your brother. You don't see him as your brother or her as your sister or this one as your mother or this one as your aunt or your uncle. You're not seeing that. You see it as congregation members. You see it as people that sort of fellowship together. And he says it's got to get to that level where you're seeing family. It's got to be elevated. And so that's why I really appreciate what my wife, the Rebbitzin, said during the announcements and during the prayer time about how being on her vacation, she realized how much she missed her family, even though she went to go spend time with her father and her sister and her niece in Florida. Yet this family was pulling on her heart. This family was drawing her heart. And that's kind of what Yeshua is trying to say here, is that he's saying, look, if you want to be like me, if you're going to follow me, if you're going to be transformed, conformed, and changed into my image, you have to see things like I see things. We talked about this, I think, in part 8, if not in part 7, the idea about letting the mind be in you, to transfer you into what he is, this change, this renewing of your mind. Well, in his mind, those that are hearing and doing the word of Elohim, that is family. That is family. By the way, that doesn't guarantee that you now are going to treat everybody with the wonderful warm fuzzies. It just means that you now have to change, because even those of us with blood family don't always treat the blood family that way. Because family is always going to have their issues at times, but if they're family, they handle them differently when it's not family. Hopefully. There's something that might keep you more together when you're not in full agreement because you're family. See, but we don't have a problem with people that are not family saying, oh, well, I could just write them off and leave them alone and go somewhere else, because after all, they're not family. It feels different. It hurts different when it's family. And so here's Yeshua saying, look, those who are hearing the word and doing the word, those are my mother, that's my brothers, those are my family. And now we bring that back to 1 John where he says, look, if you are hating your brother, now it's not talking about the bloodline stuff, is it? It's saying the ones who are your brothers because they're hearing and doing, then you're not in the light. If you are loving those who are your brothers, now you're in the light. Which makes sense, because what is the light another metaphor for? We know that light, truth, the word, Yeshua, the bread of life, all of these things all are synonymous. So how can you be in Yeshua, the Torah, the truth, the light, and be hating your brother? Besides, now remember, by definition, your brother is one hearing and doing the Torah. So if your brother is hearing and doing the Torah, how can you be hating him? Well, only if you're not hearing and doing it also. Because it's Torah to not hate your brother. The problem is that we have this issue with who's our family, who's our brothers. And there are those that were, now you have this also, I don't have the verse in front of me, but there were those that they say were among us, but they weren't of us. You know that verse? There's verses that talk about there were those that were among us, but they really weren't of us. So they would spend time with us, and they spent whatever amount of time it was, but they never were family. And then they departed. We have that here at Beth Shalom. We've had people that have been that way through the years. We have people like that who've been on the live stream and other connections to us who were among us for a while, but they weren't family and they left. See, because family should have a thicker skin. Family should have a softer heart. Family should have an abundance of the things that are in the fruit of the Spirit, the patience, the gentleness, the kindness, the meekness, the love and the joy, etc. Because you should have an incredibly higher tolerance level for family. And of course, a lot of you do, but that's what you consider when you think about your bloodline family. But Yeshua is giving a whole different definition of family here. I mean, after all, this is his mother and his brothers trying to come and see him, and he's like, they're not any different than anybody else. All of you that are hearing the word and doing it are my family. So I don't think he was saying that they were not hearing the word and doing it. He simply was saying they're no higher up and different than you guys are. And he even does that with, when he says to John, he says, when he's on the stake and the crucifixion, he says, this is your mother, this is your son. So all of us have new aunts and uncles and mothers and fathers and grandparents, depending on your age. There are people that are of an age in this congregation where, depending on what your age is, and the other person, they could be like your aunt or your uncle, your grandparents, or like parents. And so you need to have the understanding of family. So that doesn't exactly have to deal with this overcoming the lie or the evil one, but part of that lie, I'm going to say here, is who really is your family? Because we're taught to put family first. And aren't some of you given all kinds of grief around the time of year we just finished? Oh, but it's family time. It's Christmas. We have the family. And you're like, yes, the ones who are hearing and doing, that's family. That's the one I'm going to spend time with. Oh, but then they get all offended, the blood family. See, it's almost like, again, Christianese is like what I say, when you have a term that no longer means what it should mean, so it's hard to use it anymore. Even the word family is becoming a problem because it's not defining the term correctly. Because there are those who you are related to by birth, by physical birth, but that doesn't necessarily make them your family from the definition of Scripture. They're just related to you by physical birth. By the way, some of you have been adopted and know people that are adopted or have adopted, and you know that you are not physically related to those children or those parents, but yet you think of them as physical family because they're the ones who raised you. And your brothers and sisters were ones who you grew up with, regardless of the fact that you share no blood connection. See, but we all share a blood connection of being covered by the blood. So now we're dealing with a whole different metaphor of a blood relationship. So you are blood relations. If you are what? If you are those who are hearers and doers of Elohim's word. That's what Yeshua is saying here in Luke. So hopefully that helped clarify even more deeply this idea of who's your family. And so we have to take this seriously because we are never going to have the body grow into what it's going to need to be, which, by the way, is why I think the Father tarries and why Yeshua hasn't returned yet. It's not because we're waiting on magical blood moons or waiting for some magical count to 6,000 years. He's tarrying because we're just not ready. The millennium going into the kingdom is ultimately leading to this eternal kingdom of forever family. I've called it in the past preparing for the forever community. I think I was wrong. It's preparing for the forever family who lives in community. It's not just the forever community. And I don't think we've really embraced that you're my sister and you're my brother and you're my aunt and uncle or cousin or sister. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't think we've really embraced that. And so until we can embrace that, we're not really ready for that forever. Because then we're still emotionally disconnected from each other on some level that you don't tend to have with those quote-unquote blood relations, where you feel a different thing. Because somewhere in the back of your mind, your mother who gave birth to you is always your mother. Or your brother who you were raised your whole life with is always your brother. And so no matter what they do, but it's still my brother, or it's still my sister, or it's still my father, whatever it is. That's true and it's not true, if you understand what I'm saying. But yet, the new family that Abba's given you, in the rebirth, so to speak, you're now born into a new family. I mean, we know we haven't reached the ultimate idea of born again. But as we're going through this process of being reborn and changed and transformed, you have a new family. And we need to truly pray for Abba to show us, how do we do that? How do we do family the way Yeshua just described it in here? Because he said for himself, he didn't say for everybody else, he didn't go on, and you need to do this too. We know that from other verses, though, if we're going to conform and transform into his image, that it means then we need to do it too. Do what he did. Follow him. You know, he says to follow me. He says to the brothers when he finds them fishing, he says, follow me. And we know the Greek there means to come, be in like manner as. Do what I do, say what I say, be like me. It's actually discipleship language. That's really a discipleship term, a language, this idea of follow me. Come become like me. Come learn from me how to be this way. Well, he's telling us that his approach to family is, my family is those that do the word. Hear the word and do the word of Elohim. Amen?